Okay guys, so today you might take notice at my pegboard. It's really small, very handy, but I've already outgrown it, and in the limited space that I have in the garage for storing tools, what I thought would be a really cool idea and a simple project to try and build my first ever frame is to get a new pegboard to fill this lovely space here above my assembly area. So we've got the pre-built pegboard, we're going to get some recycled wood, and let's take a look at those materials. Okay, so here's my bit of pegboard. It's just an MDF pre-bought one from Bunnings, probably about 25 bucks, thereabouts. And the frame I'm going to box up using these pine slats. Now, I'm a big fan of free wood. We were throwing out these beds a few weeks ago, and they've actually got some really nice timber in them. I've already made my assembly area here out of one of the beds. I'm halfway through deconstructing this one. Now, I was going to use these long slats because, as you'll see, the pines are almost perfect for the width, but not quite long enough for that end. Even though I'm going to cut it down just a little bit to make it fit into that gap, it's still going to be longer than this. Not too much of a problem though. I decided not to use these because I don't have many bits of long lumber, and I'm going to save those for a project where I actually need the full 2 meters. So I'm just going to build up the corners on there, and then if I have a small gap halfway down through the middle, I just get another piece, drop it down. Doesn't need to be terribly structural, it's not taking a lot of weight, and that should work quite nicely. That's better. So these are just held in with some nails. Mallet gets them out pretty easily. The harder part actually is then getting the nails out of the ends of the board. You get the idea. So now I've got the slats out, just got to pull apart these last few little bolts. Now these are actually brilliant. I've used them a few times already. So not only can you recycle the timber out of the old bed, but these long bolts come with a locking nut. So fairly simple system, but put them in to make this. I didn't even need to cut the joints properly, which is great because being a novice, still learning how to cut joints properly. All I needed to do was drill a hole in the new piece of wood where I wanted it, put it through, lock it in, easy as. Okay, so we're going to make the box first and then cut the pegboard down to size to fit the box. Firstly, because I'm not really confident in my box making abilities yet, being the first one that I'm making. And if I've learned anything from watching the YouTube, if ever you're doing an inset, is to make the outside bit first and then trim down, cut down, and you can edge down to the right thing. So if you bugger up the cut the first time on your pegboard, you know you can still be able to fix that up to fit in your box. So we've measured it up. Looks like we're doing about 120 by 60 centimeters. It's going to bring it up a little bit higher than the existing one, but it'll fill the space better. And it's only going to come out half the width of this board. So this is one of the slats off the bed. It's coming in at 90mm, so we're going to rip those down to 45 using the circular saw, and then we'll be able to hopefully frame them up. I haven't decided if I'm going to attempt to miter them yet. There's no real reason to. It's going to work perfectly well with a butt joint. But well, it's something I'd like to practice. As I said, it's my first framing attempt, and this is all about making mistakes and learning as we go along, so I'll have a think about the 45s. Okay, so I've set up to make my cross cuts in order to shrink these 900mm bed planks down to the 600mm that I need for the height of the pegboard. Now, being a starter out in this and having very limited space and limited budget, I do not have the number one tool that is required for making most of your cuts in woodworking, which is a table saw. Nor do I envisage owning one anytime in the near future. So for the moment, we're going to have to deal with just having a circular saw. I stole this jig when I had this problem of what to do when you don't have a table saw but do have a circular saw, and I'll put the link up online. Really nice little video. It took about 5-10 minutes to make from a sheet of plywood, and this jig allows me to make fairly accurate and repeatable cross cuts and also rip cuts up to the length of the board. And so here we're going to be able to shorten these down, turn them around, and then rehook it all up to rip them down, splitting them, making half of the frame. One thing I should point out before we make this cut or any cut is squaring things up. So square's very handy. This little ryobi table I've got was one of the first things I bought, and it's just really handy because I can hang it up on the wall behind here when I want to get the car back into the garage and pull it out, and it's being an island and movable, I can do lots of different things. So I've got my blade set to just below the depth of this pine board. It's going to run along the rail. All I need to do is retract the guard, set it up, make sure it stays nice and flush against the jig, and hopefully we can make a nice straight cut. And there we go, 2 boards cut to length. And with that all set up, we can finally make the cut. Now the good news is, I've made the first rip, and I don't actually have to reset too much, just release a little tiny bit of pressure on here, replace the other boards and go again. Okay, so I've ripped down the 2 shorter lengths. Now this is the full length panel, and as you may notice, it is slightly longer than my jig. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. What I've let it do is just overhang a tiny bit on each end, and as long as I keep a constant pressure against the little fence rail here, I should have enough length in the actual guard on the circular saw to still make the cut all the way through. There we go, that worked quite well. So there's almost no pressure on there at all, because what I really wanted to avoid was pinching the blade. So effectively, if I tighten this all the way up, then this piece here, as it got cut, would have pressure on it, and you could end up jamming your blade a little bit. So that worked out pretty much perfectly. Now if we just release the table out a bit, there's my half ripped piece. There's my other half ripped piece. They are hopefully going to be pretty even. Not perfect, but you know, for an absolute jerry-rig setup for ripping long boards, I will take that. There you go, have the blade at exactly the right length. Almost took out the laminate perfectly. Now I've got that out, let's take another quick look underneath the jig. Okay, so I've done all my cutting now, and I thought I'd just take a second to show you my jig within a jig. So my hardest problem is with the small bench and no table saw is figuring out ways to make cuts. Being a complete novice probably also doesn't help. However, I do have to get a little bit creative. Setting up this whole cut actually probably took me 15-20 minutes, to be honest, because I had to sort of try a different way with clamps and figuring out exactly how I can make this all nice and stable. But again, get a better look at it now. A little Ryobi table gives you a lot of options in terms of angles and hanging over the edge or using the center ferrule here. And taking off the quick clamps, these 2 were holding the whole jig to the table. Then under here was a little bit of magic. So the problem is, normally on a table saw, you've of course got the table supporting your wood, and I don't have that in this setup. There was probably a million easy ways to do it, but this is the system I came up with. A little offcut, which just happened to be exactly the perfect size for wedging my full-length plank between the top of the jig and the table. So when this was all set up in there, I could use it effectively with the clamp pressure to just pinch it in. This piece of wood wasn't directly clamped to anything. It had a little bit of sideways pressure in from here and just the top bottom pressure from the jig and this little bit of offcut. So the jig within a jig, obviously I wanted to make 4 cuts there, the 2 longs and the 2 shorts, and I wanted to do them without having to remeasure and remark every board. So I marked up the first board, and then I used my square to take the mark off that board and clamp this spare bed rail all the way down at the same length. So when I had my jig there, this is basically one giant stop block, a really long one. Slide on the board, board hits up, make the first cut, take it out, you know your next 3 boards are going to be exactly the same. So that was one of the big hints I get. Again, I'll plug in many times from Steve Ramsey on Woodworking for Mere Mortals, which is currently my favourite amateur woodworking videos on YouTube, so make sure you go and check him out. is stop blocks. Just being able to use them over and over again. That way you don't have to re-measure everything, because measuring, like sanding, is not terribly fun. Anyway, that's my jerry rig. I'm sure there'll be 1,000 comments if anyone actually ever bothered to watch this video on how I could have done that 10 times easier and faster. Keeping in mind that buying a table saw, of course, is the best answer and not one that I am currently able to achieve. Anyway, this is why I'm doing this sort of woodwork projects. It's to learn on my own, along with the help of YouTube, and basically get my mind active and sort out these little problems over and over again, because every step you take, you only want to make one cut. And it does really engage your mind. It's really different to my regular work as a chemist. So it's taking me somewhere different and letting me learn and exercise my brain in a different way. Awesome. Well, they are the frame bits cut. Lots of them. Now we are ready to start cutting some dados.